We booked 670 Botox and filler appointments from Meta ads just in the last 30 days. In this video, I'm going to explain why the quality of leads that you're getting from your Facebook ads is probably terrible. So if you're getting leads and they're not even picking up, or they're picking up and they're acting confused, like they don't even remember what they clicked on, or they're saying they're not interested anymore, or maybe they're even booking the appointment but they're no showing, or they do show up but they're just a really bad quality customer. If you have any of these problems, you're in the same boat as most med spas that are advertising. The bad part is if you don't fix it, your ads are going to continuously get worse and worse over time, attracting the worst quality leads. But the good thing is, in this video, I'll explain how to actually solve it so that the quality of your leads gets better over time, the more money you spend on ads, instead of getting worse. All right, so let's talk about why your lead quality sucks and how to fix it. So before I actually show you the solution, I want to make it clear that you're never going to get 100% amazing leads. The way that your leads actually work is much more like a bell curve. So if you ever seen a bell curve, let's say these are like terrible leads. These are mid leads. And these are like great leads. Pretty much, let's say these are people who are not even picking up the phone, or they're saying, oh, my kid had my phone, or my dog had my phone, or I don't even know what this is about. I'm not even in this country. Like awful leads that are never going to book. You're going to have a percentage of leads that are here. Let's say this is 10% of your leads. Mid leads is people who, they pick up the phone, they talk to you, but they're like, oh, let me think about it. I don't know about the pricing. I'll get back to you. Most of them don't book, but they at least have a conversation with you. They're real humans. They're not bots. They're not terrible leads. And let's say that's 80% of your leads right now. And then we've got the great leads. So these ones, they pick up, they have a conversation, they're nice to you, they're not rude. They ask how you are, they book the appointment, they show up, and they actually get a treatment done. These are great leads. And let's say that's also 10%. When you implement what I'm going to talk about in this video, it's not like you're going to go from 10% of your leads are amazing and booking to 100% of them are booking and amazing. I wish we could do that, but it's not possible. What we're actually going to be doing is we're going to shift the bell curve a bit more to the right. So instead of it being like this, it's going to just move a little bit more to the point where it's like something like this, right? So before you had 10% of your leads being terrible, maybe now it's only going to be 2%. And let's say for the mid leads, it's gone down from 80% of leads are mid to 68% are mid. And then you now have 30% of your leads are great. So this is what we want to do. So if you look at this, if we had 10% of leads being great and actually booking before, that means if you spoke to 10 people, you'd only get one of them to book. But now that we've moved it to the right, and it's 30% of leads that are great, it means now when you speak to 10 people, you get 3 of them to book. So in this example, you would triple your sales with the exact same leads. Not a promise, but that is what we're doing for our clients. I'm going to show you how we're doing it right now. So the issue that most people are having with their ads for Meta is that they're optimizing. This is the European spelling for the Americans. I know it's Z for you guys. For cheap leads. This is what you're optimizing for. Meta wants to keep giving you cheap leads because that is what you told it that you want, or you probably didn't tell it anything, but that's the only information that it has right now. And so the issue that you're having right now is the only thing that it knows is whether they opted in and became a lead. It doesn't know if they, picked up the phone. It doesn't know if they, agree to book. It doesn't know if they pay a deposit. And it doesn't know who actually showed up for an appointment. In the simplest terms, it doesn't know which lead is good or bad. It just knows that this is a lead, and so they want more leads, and so I'm going to keep getting them more leads. The biggest problem here is that bad leads are cheaper. So Meta is always going to try to get more bad leads than good leads. And it's not because they want you to have bad results. It's because they actually think they're doing a good job by getting you the cheapest leads possible, because that's what you told it that you want. You didn't tell it that you want somebody who picks up or somebody who agreed to booking. or someone who paid a deposit or someone who actually showed up. And you actually can tell them who is a good lead and who is a bad lead. And when they know that, they have a much more higher likelihood of predicting who else from the ads is going to be somebody who picks up or books an appointment or pays a deposit or even shows up. And that is how you go from most of your leads being mid and terrible to shifting it so that you're having a lot more amazing leads. So the reason that the bad leads are cheaper than the good leads is simply because there's more of them. So for example, if I run ads for our company Beauty Grow, I'm going to target med spa owners in the US. And there's probably only 15 to 20,000 med spa owners in the US. And so my cost per lead is going to be it's going to be higher than if I was to target a huge audience like, women in the US. This would be a lot cheaper. But I don't want cheap leads. I don't want to sift through all the women in the US to find which ones are the med spa owners, even though it might look nice that I have a cheap cost per lead. That's not what I want. But that's what a lot of people are doing with their ads for their med spa is they're getting a bunch of cheap leads. They're obsessing over the fact that their cost per lead is really low, but in reality, it looks like this. They're getting so many trash leads and only maybe 10% of them are actually booking an appointment. Whereas if they change this and they optimized for things that are actually better, like people who pick up, people who stay on the phone for longer, people who actually agree to book an appointment, people who pay a deposit. If you do that, you will have a more expensive cost per lead, but who cares about the lead cost? We care about the people who actually book an appointment and show up. And so how do you actually tell Meta which leads are good and which ones you want to get more of and which ones are bad to get less of them? I won't go step by step in this video, but it's something called lead scoring, or you can call it pixel training or conditioning. And pretty much what that means is instead of just telling Meta that, hey, this is a lead, get us more of those, even though that lead didn't pick up, didn't book, they were rude on the phone, just get us more of those. Instead of doing that and getting you a lot of awful leads, instead of doing that, we're telling them that, okay, there actually are leads that are better than others. Get us the best leads, not just any lead. So once you have this lead scoring set up, that is when you can actually start telling Facebook, hey, this person didn't just become a lead, but they actually picked up the phone and we spoke to them for 3 minutes, for example, or they paid a deposit, or they actually showed up. You can even get as specific as telling Facebook how much money a specific customer spent. So it's not just getting you people who book an appointment, it's getting you the people who spend the most money. Hey, if you want us to run your ads for you and implement this lead scoring system, then just click below and apply and see if you're a fit. We're looking for med spas that are doing over 7 figures and want to specifically focus on their Botox and filler sales. So if that's you, then click below and apply and see if you're a fit. If not, just enjoy the rest of the video. So obviously that sounds great and everybody would like to set it up so that we only send Meta the leads who spent the most money with us. But there are some limits to how many good quality leads we can actually give them. So all of these things that I was talking about right here, like if somebody picks up, for example, or they agree to book, or they pay a deposit, or they show up, these are all called events, right? In Meta, these are called events. So right now, by default, the event that you are optimizing for is just to get a lead. And that might be somebody filling in a form, or it could even be like somebody DMing you. And again, it doesn't know if this is good or bad. So you're just optimizing for anybody who says, hey, I want to get Botox or I want to get lip filler. That's what you're optimizing for right now. And again, the more you do that, the worse quality leads you'll get because it has no idea if they did any of these other events that actually make them a more high quality lead. So once we have these events tracked, we can then send these back to Meta. And we can say, actually, instead of just getting me leads who just opt in and are trash half the time, get me people who actually agree to book an appointment. So it would be great if we could only get people who actually pay a deposit or people who actually show up. But Meta wants you to have at least 50 events. That's what they say. I've heard some really smart people say you can get away with 10 of these, but they want you to have this per week. So if you're running ads and you're not getting, 50 people who book per week and you're only getting like 5, it's not enough data to send back to them for them to be able to predict that they know which leads are going to be just like the ones that you sent them, right? So it says 50 that they recommend in Meta. Some people say 10, but I would try to get as many as possible. But pretty much, if you're not getting 50 bookings per week from your ads, you can't just send them to people who booked. But in that case, you would have to look for something that is closer to the booking, but it's not a booking itself. For example, maybe you're not getting 50 bookings per week, but you are getting 50 people who pick up the phone per week. And so you can even start there and you can say, okay, whenever somebody picks up the phone, I want to send that back to Meta. And I only want to get people who are actually going to pick up the phone. So then I don't have to deal with all these people who opted in but didn't pick up. Or maybe you're sending out 50 deposit links to your leads every week. Maybe they're not all paying that deposit, but you might at least be sending it to them over text. You can set up any of these events in your CRM. So we use Go High Level, and most med spas who run ads use Go High Level. And any of these things can be set up in a way that when a specific thing happens, you send that back to Meta, and that is the event that it starts optimizing for. So this is the most important thing that you need to understand with your ads, which is that if you just continue optimizing for the leads event, even though it doesn't know who's a good lead or who's a bad lead, it will naturally keep getting you worse and worse leads because there are more people who are terrible leads than there are high quality leads, which means it's going to cost less to get bad people than to get good people. And it thinks it's doing a good job by getting you cheap leads. So it's actually incentivized to get you worse and worse leads over time. And so we have to fix that by doing this lead scoring and doing this pixel training. And so the tactic that I would implement for yourself with your own med spa, if you want to improve your lead qualities, you need to look at all the steps until somebody gives you money, because you probably don't have those 50 bookings happening per week unless you're spending a decent amount on ads. So for our top clients, if they're spending like 20 grand a month on ads, they will get 50 bookings per week. So we can actually optimize for bookings and send that event back to Meta. But if they're a smaller account, it's just solo injector, and they're not getting 50 bookings per week, they might only be getting, 50 pickups per week. And so in that case, we would send that information back to Meta. So it's going to be based on the stage that you're at with your med spa, how big you are, and how much you're spending on ads. So let me give you some examples of how this might look for the steps in your process with your ads. So first of all, somebody has to become a lead, and that's what you're already optimizing for right now. And that's probably why you're getting a lot of bad leads, because that's where you're stopping at, which is the very first layer. But after that, there's going to be something else that happens. For example, maybe it could be a reply with SMS. So for example, with our clients, as soon as somebody opts in, we say, hey, we saw that you reached out for our Botox ad. Is now a good time to call? And we actually call them so fast that most of the time they don't even get a chance to reply to that text. But let's say hypothetically they did respond to that text, then that could be the first layer in this funnel. And then let's say the next step is somebody who actually picks up. And then after that, we might have somebody who has a call that is 3 minutes or longer. And we can see that the further we go along here, the closer we're getting to a sale. So if somebody's on the phone for 3 minutes plus, they're a much warmer lead than somebody who just picked up. And that's a much warmer lead than somebody who just replied to one SMS, which is much warmer than somebody who just opted in, right? So maybe they call, we're on the phone for 3 minutes, and then they might, agree to book. I don't know if you have some kind of tag for when somebody says, yes, I would like to book, but we do. So we're going to tag that as, like a warm lead in our CRM. And then after that, we would send them a deposit. And we also have a tag for people who have the deposit sent to them. And then after that, we're going to have somebody who actually books. And then, of course, we're going to have somebody who actually shows up and pays money. So this is the best event that we want. But again, you would need 50 of these to happen per week to have enough data to send back to Facebook. So what you need to do with your own process is, obviously this is just an example, but write it out the exact way that it happens with your leads. And you want to find one that you have, I would say at least 20 per week. of that event happening. So what do I mean by that? If, let's say, like, am I getting 20 people per week who are getting on a call that is at least 3 minutes long? If I am, then I can optimize for this and I can go send this back to Meta. And now it's going to get me much better leads, because if they're on a call for 3 minutes, they're way better than people who just don't even pick up the phone, right? Or am I sending 20 deposit links to our leads every week? If I am, then I can go send that back to Meta, right? So whichever step you do not have enough volume for, check the previous step and see if you can get at least 20 of those per week. And if you can get 20 of those, then you want to send that information back to Facebook. If you're not getting 20 calls that are going on for 3 minutes, well, are you at least getting 20 calls that they're even picking up? Even if it's just a 5-second pickup and then they hang up, it's still a little bit better than a lead who just never picked up to begin with. So you're not going to start with a perfect solution, but even if you just started out with something like pickups, or even just people who responded with an SMS to your messages, they may not be the best leads, but they're definitely higher quality than just the basic leads who opted in, who we don't know if they even responded or didn't. So you start with whichever event you have enough data for, that you're getting at least 20 of those things happening per week. And then as you get more and more volume, your lead quality will go up. And then you will start getting 20 pickups per week. And then you will start getting 20 people who are staying on the phone for 3 minutes plus per week. And then you'll start getting 20 deposits being sent per week. And then you'll start getting 20 bookings per week. And then you'll start getting 20 people who actually show up per week. So yeah, that's why your lead quality has probably been getting worse over time. It's because you're optimizing just for leads, not people who are actually taking the steps that you want them to take in order to become a qualified lead.